Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanishalaakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Nitinamine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudirayet. In this session, we'll be discussing from two verses, the 42nd and the 43rd verses of the 18th chapter of the first canto Srimad Bhagavatam. The 42nd verse is as follows: Navai nribhir naradevam parakhyam sammatum arhasi avipakva buddhe yat tejasa durvishahena gupta vindanti bhadrani akuto bhaya prajaha. The meaning of this 42nd verse: O my boy, that Shamika Rishi is addressing his son Shringi. O my boy, your intelligence is immature, apakva buddhi, and therefore you have no knowledge that the king, who is the best amongst human beings, is as good as the personality of Godhead. Because he is trained, he represents the Supreme Lord, he acts according to the Vedic injunctions given by the Supreme Lord, so he is as good as the personality of Godhead. He is never to be placed on an equal footing with common men. The citizens of the state live in prosperity, being protected by his unsurpassable prowess. The sage himself, Rishi Shamika, he was able to nicely sit in his ashram and do tapasya without any disturbance from rogues and thieves and unruly elements, because the kingdom was protected by Parikshit Maharaj, who had unsurpassable prowess. So nobody dared disturb others in the kingdom of Parikshit Maharaj. So that being the case, how can such a king be condemned to death? So the Rishi is, Shamika Rishi is describing his son as immature. He is a small boy. He definitely doesn't have the maturity when to use his Brahmanical power to curse somebody to die. He doesn't have the maturity. And he doesn't know the position of the king, especially the emperor who is ruling the world so nicely that everyone is well protected by the unsurpassable prowess of Parikshit Maharaj. He is such a great king that people are living, they are experiencing safety and they are prosperous under the rule of Parikshit Maharaj. They are prosperous. Earlier there was a description when Parikshit Maharaj was touring the state, all the citizens received him very nicely and they were glorifying his rule, that because he was the descendant of the great devotees of Krishna, the Pandavas, Therefore, they were glorifying not only Parikshit, but also glorifying the Pandavas and glorifying Krishna, who was actually guiding the Pandavas as the Lord and as the well-wisher, as the guide for his devotees. In all ways, Krishna, in different ways, Krishna was the guide for the Pandavas to rule perfectly the entire world. King Yudhishthira. In fact, Krishna only enthroned Yudhishthira Maharaj, though Yudhishthira Maharaj was not interested in taking over charge of ruling the entire world, which was his rightful claim from Duryodhana. He did not want. He was willing to forego his claim for the sake of averting a world war. So Yudhishthira Maharaj tried to negotiate for peace in so many ways. So many ways. Mahabharata elaborately describes this. But Duryodhana was obstinate and he was of demoniac nature. Durbuddhi, that's a description in the Bhagavad Gita. Dhartarashtrasya durbuddhe yuddhe priyachikirishavaha. Because of his durbuddhi, his wicked intelligence, this war became inevitable. A world war. Millions were killed in that huge massacre. 18 days, that's all. 18 Akshauhini divisions of warriors fought in that battle of Kurukshetra. And the whole world, all the rulers of different provinces, they were divided into two parties. Some on the side of the Pandavas, some fighting on the side of the Kauravas. So that could have been averted. But Duryodhana was obstinate. So the Pandavas, they were the proper rulers. They were well qualified to rule. Krishna wants his devotees to rule the world. So Krishna enthroned Yudhishthira Maharaj. Krishna arranged this battle of Kurukshetra to reduce the burden of these demoniac natured kings. So Parikshit Maharaj has been described earlier as the great and wonderful king who was ruling so nicely. Such a king is being condemned to death by an immature boy without properly knowing the position of this great emperor, by whose protection everyone is living peacefully and everyone is prosperous. So that is being pointed out by Shamika Rishi. 43rd verse. Alakshamane naradeva namni rathangapanav ayam angalokaha tadahi chaura prachuro vinangshyati arakshamano avivaruthavat kshanat. The meaning of this verse is, my dear boy, the Lord who carries the wheel of a chariot is represented by the monarchical regime, and when this regime is abolished, the whole world becomes filled with thieves who then at once vanquish the unprotected subjects like scattered lambs. So very strong words. Shamika Rishi is pointing out the great mistake done by his small young boy, his son. What is he telling here? The Lord who carries the wheel of a chariot, Rathangapani, his Sudarshan Chakra, the Supreme Lord Krishna. He is actually the protector of everyone, but he is represented by the monarchical regime, Nara Deva, or the king, who is the representative of the Supreme Lord for ruling over the citizens. And such a regime of such a good representative king is abolished, then what happens? The whole world becomes filled with thieves. As long as there's a powerful king, these thieves and rogues cannot disturb the citizens. They'll be dealt with a severe punishment by the king. Then when these thieves become prominent, because absence of a good king, at once they will vanquish the unprotected subjects. Like a wolf will devour lambs which are unprotected. Unless there's a shepherd to protect the lambs, they will simply be devoured by the wolf or other wild animals. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, the monarchical regime represents the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead. This is what the Bhagavatam describes. The king is said to be the representative of the absolute personality of Godhead because he is trained to acquire the qualities of God to protect the living beings. How does the king protect all the citizens of the world? By the power he has acquired by training. Thereby he gets the qualities of God, and therefore he is called the representative of God. By qualification, not merely by some occupying some post, decorating himself with a position. I am the king, I am the greatest. No, not simply some empty words or pride, because pride somebody declares themselves as great. No, he actually has got the qualities of God and is empowered by the Supreme Lord to protect the citizens. The battle of Kurukshetra was planned by the Lord to establish the real representative of the Lord, Maharaj Yudhishthira. Krishna is interested in protecting all the citizens by having his representative rule over the citizens. So the example is given that Krishna established Yudhishthira Maharaj as the emperor of the world. An ideal king thoroughly trained by culture and devotional service with the martial spirit makes a perfect king. So Prabhupada is comparing the present day government, system of government, with the previous system of government where a king was ruling. Such a personal monarchy is far better than the so-called democracy of no training and responsibility. Simply by votes, these representatives of the government, they rule. They sit in the, occupy the seat of power, and they rule as elected representatives. Now, what is his qualification? He has secured votes, that's all. That's the only qualification he has. He doesn't have any training, he doesn't have any, he has not acquired good qualities by education, training, culture. Not necessarily. I mean, not necessarily. I'm not condemning all the representatives, but I'm just telling, even without qualification, somebody may, by simply acquiring votes, occupy the post. The thieves and rogues of modern democracy seek election by misrepresentation of votes, and the successful rogues and thieves devour the mass of people. One trained monarch is far better than hundreds of useless ministerial rogues, and it is hinted herein that by abolition of a monarchical regime like that of Maharaj Parikshit, the mass of people become open to many attacks of the age of Kali. So Kali Yuga is characterized by the government ruling over the people not having the proper qualification. So in the absence of a good king, what really happens in the society will be described in the later verses. So I'll stop here. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.